Hare Krishna. We'd like to welcome all of you all to the Applied Bhagavatam classes. We are on the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is the first session of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we'll be operating in a completely online mode for the next several months, because Bhaktivedanta Hall of ISKCON Chowpatty, where we usually have the classes offline and simultaneously online, is going through a major renovation. For the next 4 or 5 months at least, the hall will not be available, and therefore we'll be doing the classes completely online. And going forward, the classes will start sharp at 7:30 and end by 8:30 or so, because there's going to be no kirtan, etc. So we'll just be sticking to the classes, and hopefully we will be focusing on the content of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and hopefully the whole of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam we should be able to complete in this duration, maybe a little of the fourth canto also. So we are starting the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam with a discussion between Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami, where Parikshit Maharaj asks Shukadeva Goswami for details about the conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. So Maitreya and Vidura, they have been having a very beautiful and a very Maitreya and Vidura have been having a very beautiful conversation, and that was the conversation that Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami were getting into. To get into that conversation, Shukadeva Goswami explains to Parikshit about a context. The context which Shukadeva Goswami explains is how Vidura comes in touch with Maitreya. To explain that context, Shukadeva Goswami builds up a lot of background towards Vidura. So today's session is going to be the first chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam for sure, and maybe a little bit of the second chapter also. I'm not sure whether I'll reach the third chapter of the third canto today, but let's see how it goes. This one discussion between, which is going to be about the life of Vidura, is one of the most profound and beautiful discussions of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I didn't want to hurry it, so I'm going to go in detail about the making of a Mahatma. Vidura is one of the Mahajans, and he's considered to be such a great Mahajan and a great Mahatma. Now, the question is, what is the life of Vidura, and how did he reach where he reached today? So, Shukadeva Goswami explains to Parikshit Maharaj the situation of Hastinapur. He explains that Dhritarashtra and his sons, Duryodhan and the other Kauravas, had been troubling the Pandavas a lot. They set their house on fire, they disrobed Draupadi, insulting her in public, they cheated Yudhishthir in a gambling match, and they completely disregarded Krishna. When Vidura, he understood the situation, he was helpless to a great extent, because he was a Dasi Putra, and though he was a minister of Hastinapur, he did not have too much rights over what decision should be taken. One day, Vidura was invited by his brother Dhritarashtra for a consultation. And Dhritarashtra asked Vidur for his opinion. And at that point on time, Vidura gave instructions which were perfect. His advice was very well known, and the instructions of Vidura that he gave to Dhritarashtra practically showed how expert Vidura was as a minister of state. Vidura had the ability to discriminate the right from the wrong. For anyone to walk on the path of spirituality, the first thing that is really needed is the ability to discriminate the right from the wrong. Vidura had that from his birth. Satyavati, the queen of Hastinapur, was in great grief because her son Chitrangada was killed by the Gandharvas. And then eventually her second son Vichitravirya, who had two wives, Ambika and Ambalika, he died of a disease. And at that point in time, with no heir to the throne and absolutely no idea of what is the way ahead, Satyavati was in great confusion. Satyavati, she asked Bhishma to marry the two wives of Vichitravirya, and Bhishma refused because he had taken a vow. And having no choice, Satyavati invoked the presence of her other son, Vedavyas, which nobody knew. When Vyasdev comes, Satyavati requests Vyasdev to impregnate the two wives, Ambika and Ambalika. Vyasdev, he accepts it and comes near Ambika. When he comes near Ambika, she gets scared because Vyasdev comes in a very grotesque form. It is explained that Vyasdev comes to perform a process known as Niyoga. The process known as Niyoga, which means the union of a sage with a woman for the purpose of progeny, and especially this was allowed in those times in case of an emergency. And this was an emergency at a very big level because the kingdom had no heir to the throne. And this sage, Vyasdev, when he came there, he told Satyavati that this process is not a process that is pleasure giving, but it is a process that is very divine and austere form of process. So the focus is not going to be on the body, but the focus is going to be on the Atma and invoking the presence of another Atma to come and reside in that body. So this process is called Niyoga. When Ambika saw Vyasdev, she really became scared and she closed her eyes because she expected a form that was beautiful and she was focusing on the externals. Ambalika was told that this is what you can expect. So Ambalika was already prepared mentally, but she didn't close her eyes because she knew that she would get a blind son if she closed her eyes. So the first son that was born was blind. Ambalika, she didn't close her eyes. She was looking at Vyasa, but she turned pale. And Vyasa said, the son that will be born to her will be pale. And Pandu was born. Then Vyasa came again a third time, and this time Ambika was told, be ready. And Ambika really did not want to face this. And she instead sent a maid servant who came with the right attitude, who came well informed, and who came with the right consciousness, understanding Vyasa is an incarnation of the Lord himself, and Vyasa is a great sage. Vyasa, when he entered the room all the three times, he kept chanting a mantra. Dadagarpam dadatute. Dadagarpam dadatute. So this mantra that Vyasdev was chanting he was constantly saying, I did not impregnate you. But the Supreme Lord, Lord Vishnu, who impregnates Brahma in Moola Prakriti, the cause of all the world, also impregnates you in your womb. That's what this mantra Vyasdev was chanting meant. And there is a philosophy within the story. Vyasdev is actually the Supreme Lord. And Ambika is Tamagun. Ambalika is Rajagun. And the maid servant represents Sattvagun. And just as Vyasdev sows the seed in these three women, similarly the Supreme Lord sows Brahma as the embryo in Moola Prakriti. in the form of Sattva, Raja and Tama gunas and creates the world. Dhritarashtra is full of Tamagun, Pandu is full of Rajagun, and Vidura is full of Sattvagun. And therefore, when we find that Vidura is, is performing any action in this world, he has great ability to discriminate because he is filled with Sattva gun. Just like his mother, she had the ability to discriminate the right from the wrong. She had the ability to see through an apparent gross thing. Similarly, Vidura could actually see through a lot that apparently it cannot be seen from a physical vision point of view. The Supreme Lord is known as Data. One of the meanings of the word Data means the one who gives, the one who births all of us. So, because Vidura was filled with Sattvagun, due to the grace of Vyasdev and due to the grace of his mother, who was in a sattvic mood when Vyasdev appeared to her, therefore Vidura had the ability to discriminate in an atmosphere that was filled with Raja and Tamagun. Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan had created an atmosphere that was filled with Raja and Tama. And in that atmosphere, Vidura was the only person who had Sattvagun to see what was right and what was wrong. So the first quality one needs to cultivate to become a Mahatma is Sattvagun, which gives you the ability to discriminate the right from the wrong. Vidura said, he told Dhritarashtra and everyone present there, especially Duryodhan, he said that you must return the share of Yudhishthir back to him. And Yudhishthir is Ajata Shatru. He has no enemy at all. And he is a very tolerant person. Because he has no enemy and he is a very tolerant person, he has gone through unlimited suffering because of you, Vidura tells Duryodhan. And he is waiting with his younger brothers simply to for you to do some justice. And among his younger brothers is Bhima, who is hissing like a snake to take revenge. And I'm sure you're already afraid of Bhima. And he said, not only is Yudhishthir Ajata Shatru and he is such a great person, but Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, himself has accepted the Pandus, the sons of Pandu, as his own people. And all the kings of the world are with Shri Krishna. Therefore, when Shri Krishna is present with all of them, and Shri Krishna is their family member and their friend, it is simply sensible for you to return the kingdom back to them. When the Pandavas came to the Kaurava assembly, when Krishna came to the Kaurava assembly as a Pandava Doot, Duryodhan and all his friends, they had already made a plan. In fact, Duryodhan tells all his friends, Karna, Shakuni and all of them, that all of you know very well that tomorrow when Krishna comes into our palace, Bhishma and Drona are going to support him. And they both are planning to call my mother Gandhari in the assembly to give me advice. If this continues, Bhishma and Drona will join Krishna and kill me together. Before they do that, before they take me in captivity, as per their plan, I want to capture them. So, the next morning, Krishna comes to the palace of Hastinapur, and there is a whole assembly, hundreds of people waiting there to receive Krishna. And Dhritarashtra welcomes Krishna to the palace, and um, Krishna already knows what to expect. In fact, he is already expecting this from Duryodhan. He comes to the palace, he starts discussing as a peace messenger, and things start becoming heated up. And at some point of time, Duryodhan blurts out his plan. He tells Krishna, "Oh Krishna, you have come here to capture me and take me to the Pandavas. Before you capture me, I'm going to capture you." Krishna starts laughing loudly. And when Krishna starts laughing, he tells Duryodhan, "Do you think I'm alone here? Do you think that you can easily take me as a prisoner?" Now Duryodhan, obviously, he doesn't see anybody along with Krishna. Krishna is alone there. There is nobody else. He has not got his army. He has not got the Narayani Sena. Absolutely no one there. So Krishna is alone, without any weapons. And when Duryodhan looks around to see who else is there, suddenly a lightning appears from the sky, and all the devatas, they appear in the body of Krishna. Krishna expands into the Virat Rupa, and on his forehead is Brahma, Agni is his face, then the Lokapals are his shoulders, Balaram and Arjun are both his arms, the four Pandavas become the back of Krishna, fire comes out from his eyes, from his ears and from his nostrils, his eyes shine like the sun. Duryodhan is just unable to deal with this level of brightness and this level of intensity. And Duryodhan literally faints. It is explained that the light that is shining is so brilliant, so powerful, that everyone's eyes close. Except 4 people. Nobody else was able to see the Virat Roop of Krishna. The 4 people that saw it was Bhishma, Drona, Vidura and Sanjay. Other than these 4 people, nobody else literally were able to see the complete form of the Lord and tolerate it with their eyes open. Krishna blessed Dhritarashtra with divine vision. In that assembly, Dhritarashtra was the only person who was blind. Everybody else could see with their eyes. But Dhritarashtra could not see. Therefore, Krishna gave him a divine vision. He gave Dhritarashtra this divine vision. Dhritarashtra started crying. In his life, for the first time, he saw something. Imagine a person who is blind from his birth and is able to see something for the first time. What will be the experience of that person? What will be the excitement and enthusiasm of that person? And imagine the first thing that this person who is blind from birth sees is Krishna's form. What a fortunate person. Krishna tells Dhritarashtra, "Ask for any boon. I'll give you whatever boon you ask for." Dhritarashtra, he tells Krishna that, "My dear Lord, I have seen this form of yours. I do not want any other blessings." He says, "Please take away my vision. I don't want to see anything else in my life. The only thing in this life that I want to see and I have already seen is your divine form. Nothing else matters to me." Dhritarashtra requests Krishna to take away that divine vision. All of us, we need divine vision to see. There are 2 types of vision. There is mundane vision, with which we can see things around us. But it needs divine vision to see the higher truth. Vidura, he had divine vision. And because Vidura had divine vision, he could see Krishna's role in the life of the Pandavas. He could very clearly see how Duryodhan is completely displeasing Krishna. He could very clearly see what is right and what is wrong. The greatness of great sages is this vision, which is called Divya Prakash. Prakash means light. Divya Prakash means divine light. And for us to see anything, we need light. If there is no light and there is total darkness, you can't see anything. And therefore, we need light. Similarly, in our life also, there are many times, many situations where everything becomes hazy and dark. Whenever we go through situations where everything becomes hazy and dark and we are not able to see clearly, we need Prakash, Divya Prakash. And when we have that Divya Prakash, even if there is utter darkness, we can see clearly. And therefore here, Vidura, he could see clearly that Duryodhan is messing up. He could see clearly Krishna is with the Pandavas. And based on that, Vidura, and of course, now he has seen the Virat Rupa. There is nothing else that Vidura would ever want to see in his life. He has experienced the highest. Now, after Vidura, he is consulted by Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra asks him, please tell me what should we do. For the first time in Vidura's life, he speaks courageously and openly. Why does Vidura not speak clearly till this point in time? Several reasons. One reason is, so far, nobody asked him for an advice. Today, Dhritarashtra is asking him for advice. Even if you are the minister of a country, it's best not to speak unless your advice is sought. If you give advice without your advice being sought, you will only face insult and you will only face people who don't take you seriously. When Dhritarashtra asked Vidura for advice, Vidura spoke courageously and clearly. Vidura tells Dhritarashtra, you are maintaining offense personified. Duryodhan. Your son Duryodhan is offense personified. And simply because he is envious of Krishna. And because you are maintaining someone who is not a devotee of Krishna, you are also devoid of all auspicious qualities. Relieve yourself of this inauspiciousness and do good to your whole family. Vidura spoke openly and clearly. When you speak, good speech should be made up of three components. Good speech should be pleasing. Good speech should be truthful. And good speech should be beneficial. Of these three things, being pleasing, beneficial, and truthful, of these three things, the first two are most sought after, being beneficial and being pleasing. But being truthful is not exactly the most sought after thing in speech. When you speak pleasing, that means you're trying to please someone. It's called appeasement. Appeasement can be forsaken for the sake of truthfulness and for the sake of benefit. But for the sake of pleasing, that means you can reject truthfulness. You can reject appeasement for speaking something that is truthful and speaking something that is beneficial. But you can never reject truth for the sake of appeasement. Sometimes we are scared to tell someone the reality. We like to speak things that are pleasing to others. But sometimes when we speak the truth is not always pleasing. It might be bitter. It might be too heavy for another person to digest. So appeasement should not come at the cost of truthfulness and benefit. If you really want to benefit somebody, it may not be pleasing to that person. It might even sound very harsh to that person. but that's the truth they have to hear. When someone is speaking, we should try to have all these three things in our speech. That means it should be truthful, it should be pleasing, and it should be beneficial. But when someone is hearing, we should not take pleasing seriously. Don't look for pleasing words. Look for truthful words. Look for beneficial words. Don't look for only pleasing words. So when Duryodhan would hear, he would always want to hear words that please him. But sometimes when he would have to hear the truth which does not please him, he would not like it. And therefore, it is important that an advisor gives advice that is not simply based on pleasing the other person whom he is advising, but based on what is pleasing, beneficial, and truthful. And if you have to sacrifice one of these three, sacrifice pleasing. But do not sacrifice being truthful, and do not sacrifice being beneficial to that person. Vidura, when he spoke to Dhritarashtra, he spoke only when he was consulted. When we speak to somebody, first of all, the question that we have to ask ourselves is that, am I asked to give my opinion? Am I asked to speak? Even if you are asked to speak, you have to ask yourself, are you the right person to speak? Sometimes people may want you to speak, but you may not exactly be the right person to speak in a particular situation. It's better to keep quiet than speak the wrong things in the wrong way. And therefore, Vidura here, so far in the journey of the Mahabharata, he hadn't spoken much because nobody really cared for his opinions. Nobody really wanted his opinions. Nobody really valued his opinions in Hastinapur. And though Vidura was such a great scholar, though Vidura was so knowledgeable, his opinion was not sought after. Shakuni, who was far, far inferior to Vidura, his opinion was taken very seriously. And Vidura's opinion was not at all taken seriously. So it is explained that there are three types of advisors and there are three types of advisors. The first type of advisor is called Uttama Purusha. Uttama Purusha are exemplary men who discuss and seek counsel from great men concerned about their welfare, those who are very expert at deliberating before making decisions, and only when such advice is sought, after considering such advisors, consider the pros and cons of every circumstance, and they rely on the grace of God, and then they give an advice. Such advisors are called as Uttama Purusha. The second category of advisors are called as Madhyama Purusha. So basically, Madhyama Purushas are mediocre people who have independent thinking but don't want advice from anybody. You'll find such people all around the world. These are people that are not interested in your advice. They arrive at their own conclusions and with great faith in their own abilities, but they also depend on the grace of the Lord. And they immediately take action. This is the second category of people called Madhyama Purushas, those who are seeking advice. The third category of people are called as Adhama Purushas. So the first category are people who willingly go and seek advice and they follow it nicely. Second category of people, they don't seek advice so much. They use their own independent thoughtfulness and they rely on God and they seek and they do what is best according to them. The third category of people are the worst. They're called Adhama Purusha. They don't listen to any advice and they don't rely on anybody, including God. They take random decisions without even considering pros and cons. At least Madhyama Purushas consider pros and cons and then take a decision depending on God. Adhama Purushas don't even look at pros and cons and they just randomly take decisions and they, even when they decide, they keep procrastinating. They don't even implement the decisions that they have taken. So these are the most incompetent of the three. So we're talking about first people who are seeking advice. They fall under these three categories. But advice itself falls under three categories. The best advice is called as Uttama Mantaranga. Mantaranga comes from the word mantri. Mantaranga means when a mantri gives an advice, it's called Mantaranga. This is the opinion of a minister. It's called Mantaranga. So the first type is called as Uttama Mantaranga. So Uttama Mantaranga means the ultimate advice, or it is called the best type of advice. What is Uttama Mantaranga? The best kind of advice is an advice that comes from collective opinion of many like-minded men who are thinkers. They are all on the same page and they have no difference of opinion. These arrive at a conclusion after objectively examining facts, and they carefully analyze and discuss based on scriptures, and then they come up with an advice which they all agree upon. This is called Uttama Mantaranga. This is the best type of advice that you can get in your life. The second type of advice is called Madhyama Mantaranga. Madhyama Mantaranga is advice that is given after a lot of thinking and deliberation. And it is considered to be a second class advice because it is arrived at after several conflicting opinions. That means all the parties that are trying to form an opinion, they fight a lot and then they say, fine, this is what we agree upon. Because this is considered a second class advice because the advisors, they are not exactly fully agreeing to the advice. But because to keep harmony and to keep things together, they all agree to some things and they come up with an opinion. This is the second type of advice. The third type of advice is called Adhama Mantaranga. It is actually not an advice at all. Here, all advisors have divergent opinion. They don't agree to each other at all. And after a long discussion also, they don't come to a conclusion. And such advice given by advisors who don't budge from their opinion and who are indifferent to other people's opinion, when they give an advice, that advice is worth running away from. It is not at all beneficial. So the first class advice, it helps you fly. The second class advice, it helps you float. And the third class advice, it helps you sink. So Vidura obviously gives the first class advice, the topmost type of advice. And but the only problem is that is the person who is coming to seek the advice the topmost. So if you are the topmost advisor, but the person that you are advising is not the topmost person in the category of seeking advice, your advice is useless. So Vidura was in a situation where he was trying to give advice. Dhritarashtra is asking him for advice, but Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan are not at all in a mood to follow that advice. And therefore, Vidura, he thought, let me express myself clearly. Whether they follow it or not is their problem. So he straight away spoke the truth and he didn't mince words. He tells Dhritarashtra that your son Duryodhan is the cause of all problems. And he tells, you are maintaining offense personified Duryodhan, and your son is envious of Krishna. And because you are maintaining someone who is a non-devotee of Krishna, you are devoid of all auspicious qualities. He said, throw this fellow out, throw Duryodhan and save your entire family. This is something very, very important. Whenever we are trying to achieve greatness in our personal lives, we're talking about two things. One is the story that happened, but also we're talking about an internal journey that we are all going through in our own lives. Just like Vidura is playing a particular role in Hastinapur, But from the role that Vidura is playing in Hastinapur, there is going to be a journey that starts of his own. In the journey that starts of his own, Vidura is going to experience a sequence of transformation. I hope all of y'all are using the sheet that is given to y'all. Those who are on the Telegram group, you can just look at the pinned messages and you will find today's notes, the applied Bhagavatam notes. You will find that I have defined clearly the steps that led to Vidura becoming a Mahatma, Vidura becoming a great soul. And these are the exact same steps that all of us need to follow if we want to become great souls in our life. Great soul doesn't mean anything esoteric. Great soul simply means someone who is wanting to receive the blessings of the Lord, someone who's walking the path of Dharma. So Mahatma Vidura walked on the path of Dharma, and the first thing that he had to imbibe is Sattvagun, which gives him the ability to discriminate the right from the wrong. The second thing was that he was always respectful to the Lord and his devotees, even when he was in the middle of atheists. Third thing was he spoke the truth courageously. The fourth thing was that he gave advice when asked for. The fifth thing is identifying the root of all problems. And what is the root of all problems in our life and in everybody's life? The root of all problems is envy. Here, he is telling clearly to Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, the problem with Duryodhana is that he is envious of Krishna. The problem that Vidura identifies in Duryodhana is a problem that exists in all of us. We are also envious to some extent or other. In fact, even after coming to spiritual practice, spiritual life, we still continue to be envious. We still continue to experience envy that bursts out in different ways in our lives. It is explained that Matsarya or envy it's like a drug. It inspires you to go ahead, but in a very strange way, a lot of times we think that we are going ahead by inducing envy in people. Like say for example, in an organization, sometimes we induce envy by telling someone that you have sold more books than this person. You have sold highest number of books. Or for example, you have given the highest amount of donations. Or this so and so person has done the highest number of hours of seva. Or so and so person has done 192 rounds. What are we doing? We are, in one sense, we're trying to inspire, but on another sense, when two people are trying to go ahead in their spiritual journeys, one person runs ahead and one person is walking ahead. So the person who is walking starts feeling that the person who is running is way ahead of me. And that leads to a feeling of enviousness. And that feeling of enviousness is a very bad feeling to have spiritually. So when we look at somebody else progress and we kind of want to quantify or subject our progress or decide whether we are progressing based on somebody else's progress, it's not exactly the best way. In the Ramayana, we find Vishwamitra and Vashishta. They went through something like this. Vishwamitra, he measured his success based on Vashishta's success. If Vashishta is doing this, I should be able to do this. If Vashishta is not able to do this, then I should definitely be able to do this. And therefore, when we are in this mood of trying to look at somebody else's progress and we're feeling insecure looking at somebody else's progress, there is envy within the heart. And that simply is envy towards Krishna. If your envy if you're envious towards somebody else's talent, if you're envious towards somebody else's progress, if you're envious towards somebody else's abilities and achievements, we're envious about one aspect of Krishna. If you study the scriptures and you study the life of great devotees, whether it is in the Ramayana, in the Bhagavatam, in the Mahabharata, you'll always find that great souls, they don't have envy in their hearts. They are empty of enviousness. They have no ill feelings towards one another. You will never find Lakshman becoming jealous of Bharat. You will never find Bharat becoming jealous of Hanumanji. You will never find, one of the Gopas envying another Gopa. You will never find, Nanda Maharaj envying Vasudeva. Or you will never find Devaki envying Yashoda. These feelings of envy don't exist among devotees. And the moment we allow the feelings of envy to exist in our heart, we simply are not practicing bhakti at all. Vidura points this out. He says, the root of all problems of Duryodhana is that he is envious of Krishna. Identifying the root of the problem is one of the steps towards our making progress. So we may, we may actually be in Sattvagun. We may be respectful to the Lord and His devotees, and even when we are in the middle of a calamity, we may actually be speaking truth courageously. We may be giving the right advice when asked for. We may actually, but if we are not able to overcome enviousness in our hearts, we will not be able to progress further. Vidura was non-envious, and he was trying to help Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana also understand the root of their problem, which is envy towards Krishna. But instead of understanding him, Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, especially Duryodhana, began to insult Vidura. The words that Duryodhana uses towards his own uncle is so painful to hear. The Srimad Bhagavatam defines these words that Duryodhana spoke to Vidura. He tells, he was angry. Duryodhana was wild in anger, and with lips quivering, Duryodhana spoke in the company of Karna and his brother Dushashan, along with Shakuni. He spoke such heavy words towards Vidura. He said, "Who has asked this Dasi Putra to come here?" Duryodhana is calling Vidura as Dasi Putra. He's telling him, "Who has asked this Dasi Putra to come here?" He is the son of a kept mistress. He is crooked, and he is so crooked that he spies in the interest of the enemy, and he spies those very people under whose support he has grown up. And Duryodhana says, throw him out of the palace immediately and leave him with nothing except his breath. Now imagine, a nephew is talking like this about his uncle. That is the nature of Duryodhana. And obviously now when Vidura hears this statement, he becomes really hurt. He becomes very sad and very disturbed. Vidura, he gathers himself. He's pierced in his heart. His ears are in agony hearing these words. To the core of his heart, he's experiencing pain. He keeps his bow and arrow down, and he keeps it at the door of the palace. And he walks out of the palace of his brother. And he was not at all sorry that he has lost everything. He is not at all sorry that he's walking out of the palace at that point in time. He understands that whatever is happening as a desire of the Supreme Lord. Insult does not affect him. Every single person who is a Mahatma will go through insult. In fact, The people that he loves the most sometimes insult him the most. In fact, anybody who is a part of this material world will be subjected to insult in some form or the other. It may be your family members and insult you. It may be some strangers whom you are working with who will insult you. It could be that you will get insulted by strangers on the street. The nature of this material world is that there will always be somebody who's trying to pull you down and someone who's trying to pierce your heart with such heavy words. Being unaffected by insult is very, very important. Most of us, we don't have a way to process shame and insult. Most of the time, when we go through shame in our life, when we go through insult in our life, we take it very personally and we make it so much a part of our life that it actually transforms into guilt. And the funny part is, those who are supposed to be actually feeling guilty, they are totally shameless. There's a very interesting story that, Yudhishthir, after the war is over, when Duryodhana and all the Kauravas are dead, he is crying and lamenting how he is the cause of all the death that has happened. And with this crying and lamenting situation, Krishna takes him to Bhishma. And Bhishma tells Yudhishthir a fantastic story. And Bhishma tells Yudhishthir, I told exactly the same story to Duryodhana, and I'm going to tell you this story. And Bhishma tells Yudhishthir the exact same story. What does he tell him? He tells him that many years back, there was a hunter who was had laid down a snare, a net, to catch birds. So there were two birds that were flying, and one of the birds looked at the other bird and said, hey, look down there. There is a lot of juicy grains. Let's go and eat them. Together they landed on the grains and, they began to peck and eat on the grains. Only after they ate, they realized they made a big mistake because their legs were stuck in the net. And they tried to remove the legs out, but they were badly stuck. And the two doves, the two birds started blaming each other. One bird said, every time you see grains, you want to stop and eat. Now look at this. We are in a trap because of your untimely and voracious appetite. Why can't you just control yourself? One bird started telling the other bird. And the other bird said, how dare you find fault in me and my appetite? Did I drag you here? I only told you that there is grains over here, and as far as I know, you pounced on the grains. And so they were just arguing one after another. In the meanwhile, the hunter was coming running towards them. And when the two birds, they saw that the hunter is running towards them and they are very badly trapped, they spoke to each other and they said, see, let's stop fighting for some time and let's just together put our energy on tricking this hunter and getting away from here. Both the birds decided, we'll flap our wings together. And when we collectively flap our wings together, we would fly with the net. And when the hunter was about to reach close, both the birds together they flew and the net flew along with them. And the hunter began to run behind the birds trying to catch the net. But the birds were flying very high. And while they were flying, the hunter was running behind them and he banged onto a sage who was coming in that direction. The sage asked the hunter, what are you doing? Can't you see where you're walking or running? The hunter said, sorry. These two birds are flying with my net. I'm just trying to catch them. The sage said, forget it. These birds are flown. How is it even possible that you go and catch them with the nets? The hunter said, see, just before they flew, I saw them quarreling with each other. And I know for sure, I just have to follow for some more time. They'll quarrel a little more. And then when they quarrel, they will lose their focus and they'll fall down and I'll be able to catch them. And lo and behold, as the birds were going a little further, they began to continue their quarrel again. One bird said, if you were just not so hungry all the time, we would have never been caught in the net. The second bird said, if I am a glutton, too much hungry, then you are a fool. And they began to quarrel like anything. And as they were quarreling, slowly the net began to come down because they were not focusing on flying. And the hunter caught the two birds, and that was the end of the two birds. Bhishma told exactly this story to Duryodhan and to Yudhishthir. He told Duryodhan, just like these two birds, don't quarrel with your relatives. If people quarrel within their own tribe, somebody else will take advantage. Bhishma told Duryodhan this, and he didn't listen, and he ended up losing his life. When Yudhishthir heard this story, he felt relieved. He felt relieved that Duryodhan is the one who did not listen to the advice of Bhishma. If only Duryodhan had listened, such a massive war would not have happened, and so many people would not have died and lost their lives. And that's when Yudhishthir actually started feeling a little better, because he realized that I am not totally responsible for this. I am only partially responsible, but Duryodhan also is equally responsible, and he could overcome that guilt. Usually, when we go through insult, we start becoming guilty. When we go through situations where we blame ourselves for different things that happened in our life, we start becoming guilty. Mahatmas are those who do not allow guilt to descend into their life, who do not allow themselves to be affected by insult so much. There was a man who was standing on the bank of a river. There was a Mahatma having a bath in the river. This Mahatma came out after having a bath fresh. The moment he came out and wiped himself, this man who was standing there spat on him. And the moment he spat on him, this Mahatma went back into the river and had a bath. And he came out. Again this man spat on him. This Mahatma silently went back into the river and had a bath. Again he came out. And this man spat on him yet again. And the Mahatma went into the river and had a bath and came out. After many such times of spitting and going and having a bath, this man finally got fed up. And he said, how are you able to manage this? How do you not get insulted? How do you not feel that insults? I've just been spitting on you again and again and again. How do you manage it? This Mahatma told him, I have been thanking you from my heart. I've been so grateful to you that usually on a normal day, I have a bath 2 or 3 times in this holy river. But because you have been spitting on me on this holy day of Ekadasi, I got to have bath 108 times. So he said, I would have never been able to do it on my own if you had not been spitting on me. This Mahatma, he just simply realized and learned the art of not focusing on the insult, but focusing on something higher. The mind is a very deadly thing. What it focuses on, that's all it remembers. If you focus on insult, all that the mind will remember is insult. But if you focus on something higher, all that the mind will remember is something higher. You study all of the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, in fact, you study all of the scriptures, you will always find one thing in common among all the Mahatmas. They do not focus on the insult. They do not give the mind so much of strength that it focuses on an insult. But they empower the mind to focus on something higher and remain unaffected by that insult. Just like Vidura, we also will face series of insults in our personal lives. And every time we face series of insults, let us not focus on the insult, but let us focus on something higher and something beyond. Vidura, rather than focusing on the insult, he started taking a philosophical approach towards looking at that situation. What did he do? This is the 7th thing that Vidura did. He started looking at setback philosophically. So when he was being pierced by arrows through his ears, and the arrows that afflicted the core of his heart, Vidura, he quit. He left the palace. But he was thinking that this is an act of the external energy of the Supreme Lord. The Maya Shakti of the Supreme Lord, the external energy of the Supreme Lord, the destiny, the hand of destiny is so powerful that it can make anyone do anything. And we simply are puppets in the hands of destiny. And he began to look at the entire thing from a philosophical point of view. I'm going to tell you all a very interesting and a very beautiful short story now. The story was told by Betal to Vikramaditya. Every time Vikramaditya got Betal and caught him and brought him back home, when he was on the way, Betal would tell a story. And if Vikramaditya answered the story rightly, then the Betal would not harm him. But if he did not answer the story rightly, the Betal would destroy him. But the condition also was that, when Vikramaditya carried the Betal with him, he is supposed to remain silent. But Betal would ask such provoking stories that Vikramaditya would have to speak. One such story is this. One time there was a Brahmin whose name was Krishna Datta. And this Brahmin was a great student and eventually he became a very great scholar. His father began to think of arranging the marriage of this boy whose name was Hari. And eventually, before his father Krishna Datta could arrange for the marriage of his son Hari, he died. Hari was very heartbroken and he continued living his life without his father. But he started doing taking on all the responsibilities of his father. And at one particular ceremony, he met a woman whose name was Lilavati. They fell in love with one another and they decided to get married. The family supported it and it was a perfect marriage, made in heaven. And they were so happy. One day, the two of them were having a bath in a river. And the river water the current was so powerful and Lilavati did not know how to swim. And she got swept away in that current. She was just not able to hold on. And as Hari saw that he had lost his wife in the current, he was absolutely in shock. Right in front of his eyes, she got swept away. And Hari, he could not live normally because of the loss of his dear wife. He started practically neglecting his own body, neglecting his own life, became almost like a derelict. One day, he happened to come to his uncle's house. By this time, Hari had grown a big beard, very disheveled, and in a very bad shape physically. His uncle saw that this boy had become completely wasted, and he decided to allow him to stay for a few days and nourish him. And with that thought, he gave him a glass of milk to drink. So Hari took this glass of milk and sat under a tree in the courtyard. And as he sat with this glass of milk in the courtyard, somehow he went into a deep sleep. And a snake happened to come by. And the snake, it dropped its venom in the milk which was inside that glass. When Hari woke up after some time, he didn't know about the snake dropping its poison in the glass of milk. And he just drank it. And as soon as he drank it, he immediately realized that it's poison and he's about to die. He ran inside, dying of poison. And while dying, he just told his uncle the last words, "Why did you poison me? What did I do to you?" And then he died. The uncle froze in fear. He could not even think that he would do something like this. And, the uncle uncle's wife, she heard this boy dying and the last words that the boy said. And the wife totally lost confidence in her husband. And she actually believed that her husband had poisoned this boy. And his wife ran and jumped into the well and ended her life. Now, this uncle was left alone now. Dead wife jumped into the well, dead nephew who died out of poisoning, blaming him for it. Now, Betal asked Vikramaditya, who was responsible for the death of the uncle's wife? Can you tell? So, Vikramaditya started thinking. And immediately he said, Hari cannot be blamed for the death of his wife because he was not even alive. And especially when Hari blamed his uncle for his own poisoning, you can't even blame Hari because when a person is in a deluded state of mind, in a poisoned state of mind, he cannot think clearly. So then Betal asked, was the snake at fault? Vikramaditya said, the snake is naturally, the nature of the snake is to spit venom. So the snake cannot be held responsible. It doesn't have choices over its actions. Then Betal asked, then who is to be blamed? Vikramaditya said something very interesting. He said, the only thing that you can blame for the death of the uncle's wife is destiny. There are some things in life where you cannot explain why something is happening to you in your life. Somebody might insult you, but you don't know why they are insulting you. Somebody might turn against you. You don't know why they are doing so. Somebody might act hostile towards you. You have no idea why that is happening. In life, things do happen. That's the nature of this world. And then that's the nature of destiny. Whenever you come across a situation where you can't understand what's happening and you do not have a logical answer for what is happening and why it is happening to you in your life, that is the time to take a philosophical approach towards the problem. Philosophical approach helps you deal with the burden of guilt, deal with the burden of insult, deal with the burden of blame, and deal with the burden of so many questions that have no answers. Destiny is powerful. We find in almost every scripture, we find stories like this, where something happens to a person where they don't have any control over it. Like for example, Chitraketu, he had one son, and the wife that gave birth to the son, she loved him so much, and Chitraketu naturally loved his wife so much. But all the other wives of Chitraketu became envious of this wife who gave birth to the child, and they poisoned this wife. And the son died. Now, who is to be blamed? Obviously, the wives are to be blamed. But Chitraketu realized there is something more deeper for me to think about, the nature of this world. The nature of this world is Harsha Shoka. It means happiness, and Shoka means lamentation. When you are happy, you will go through lamentation very soon. And when you are lamenting, you will go through Harsha, happiness very soon. Great personalities, whether it is Lord Ram, whether it is Krishna, whether it is Chanakya, whether it is Chandragupta, whether it is Vidura over here, whether it is so many personalities, Bhishma himself, so many times in our lives when we go through tribulations and difficulties, what differentiates a normal person from a Mahatma? The thing that differentiates a normal person from a Mahatma is this one fact, that when a normal person goes through a reversal, a normal person wants to blame someone, wants to shift the blame on somebody. A normal person is not able to handle it. But a Mahatma does not shift the blame on anybody, but rather takes a deeper look at setbacks from a philosophical point of view. And the Mahatma decides to go deeper into one's own spiritual journey. Vidura at this point in time is going to make a very powerful decision that is going to completely change the direction of his life and completely take him on a totally different journey of spirituality. What Vidura does and how he handles reversals that came in his life so unexpectedly, and how does he make the best of his life, we will see next time. So the next time when we meet, we're going to go into the next steps of Vidura's journey towards becoming Mahatma. So far we covered 7 steps of the 14 steps that are there for Vidura becoming a Mahatma, and Vidura's transformative journey from what he was, being a minister of Hastinapur, towards becoming one of the greatest personalities, having conversations with personalities like Uddhava and Maitreya. The kind of conversations, the kind of deep conversations that Vidura has with Uddhava and Maitreya indicate that he is no more that person that he was. But he went through a tangible transformation in his journey to make him one of the most sought after and one of the most powerful personalities who reached the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. If he had perhaps remained a minister in Hastinapur, he would have remained in the pages of the Mahabharata. But what he does at this point in time, during the greatest reversal, during the greatest upheaval of his life, when he was insulted like anything, when he was kicked out of his own kingdom, what he does moves him from the pages of Mahabharata to the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam forever. And that's the journey that all of us have to take. Life is Mahabharata. Life is a war. But how do we move from the war of life, from the battle of life, towards the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, where there is tranquility, where there is divinity, and where there is a higher purpose? That's what Vidura's journey is, and we'll continue on the journey the next time. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.